Today's brilliant move is brought to us by Aron Nimzowitsch, a young student at the time that this game was played. This is an extremely casual game that is basically the definition of coffeehouse chess, where you're hanging out with some friends, probably in a beer house, not so much a coffee house, and you're just chatting, having fun, and trying to throw out the most brilliant idea you can. Nimzowitsch succeeds in this game. Now, I should point out here that in this position with Nimzowitsch to move, he doesn't have to be brilliant, although this is still kind of a crazy line. He can win the game kind of prosaically and not in the fashion that he did. The winning move would be queen g4 here, threatening mate on g7. The following line is pretty crazy, but it's instructive and makes sense, so we're going to take a good look at it. g6 is needed to defend g7. The queen can pick off this knight now, threatening to get in here. The way to try and defend is now queen e2, hoping for a trade of queens, and then we can cut off the queen with knight f3, no queen h5 now. So at this point, after knight f3, black needs to play h5 to physically stop the white queen from getting into h6, and now the queen should try to get in anyway. At this point, it's going to be impossible for black to defend the dark squares, although it's not obvious right away that that's the case. Black can try pawn to c3 or a number of other moves, but in all cases, white's going to try and enter the dark squares now. Now the king needs to go to h7, and we see knight g5 check. That's why I just put the queen on f4 instead of g5, because we need the g5 square for the knight. See how that works? So the king runs back to h7, and now the knight can move to a different square instead of f3, coming back to e4, where it's more useful, and again we're threatening to get in here to h6. The king steps up. The bishop now comes back, threatening knight f6 check, which will lead to mate. And the only way for black to kind of stop the knight f6 check leading to mate is to try to physically cut off some of the attacking lines for white, but this still wins. Now we get knight f6 check, and black can go ahead and take that. Otherwise, we're getting in over here, or we're getting massive discoveries that are devastating. But after this, we're still getting in to the 7th rank, and there's no defending the position for black. For example, rook here, and you can still find a way in. Black simply cannot hold the position, and Stockfish even announces mate in 6, which is pretty spectacular. This whole line is spectacular, but it was an option available to Nimzowitsch, and it's pretty cool as is. Nimzowitsch, however, found something even cooler, but a little less sound. He played the move bishop to e8, which is awesome. I love this move. This is not a good move, but it is a move that I love. Now, after bishop e8, black has two choices that work. Black plays one, but then follows it up badly. The really kind of obvious reason that this move doesn't work is simply that black can take here on f6, and if you capture here, you really don't have anything. The king can step up to g7, and what's your next move? You don't really have a next move. Unfortunately, all your counterplay has dissipated. However, black tries the other move, which does also work. Rook a takes e8. Of course, let's quickly point out that you can't take with this rook, because after queen check, king over, either the bishop or the queen can take on g7, and that's mate. So it's the a rook that takes, so that f7 is defended. But now there's a problem that black probably didn't anticipate. I certainly would never have anticipated this. Nimzowitsch plays queen to h6, threatening mate here on g7, which is awesome. Okay, so the mate is nearly unstoppable. Black can only avoid it by taking a white piece. Unfortunately, he now picks the wrong piece to capture. He should have captured the bishop here. And after knight g4, it looks like black is just getting mated, but that's not the case. There's queen takes f2 here, defending the f6 pawn. Now, black has already just given up the queen. White can capture it, or black is going to give it up after the knight captures on f6. But in this position, it's not only not a win for white, it's actually a win for black. White doesn't have a perpetual because this knight very annoyingly serves a function and defends g5. So in this position, all black needs to do is move the rooks so that there won't be a perpetual, And then the pawns will start marching, and it's a total win for black. There's a few checks for white, but this is massively winning for black. The king can march into the center, and white's queen will soon run out of checks, and there are no reinforcements available to the white queen. So black could have given up the queen and just won this game, although, it's not easy to consider giving up the queen even in dire defensive circumstances. One also wonders if black had seen what was coming. After queen h6, the black player, Hoffer, just took the queen. Like, what are you doing? Your queen is hanging. And Nimzowitsch now plays knight g4, producing a fantastic position. In this position, from an actual game, even if it's a casual game, white has a knight and a bishop attacking, while black has 2 rooks, a queen, a knight on h3, and even 2 passed pawns that are basically unstoppable. And black has the move, and there is nothing black can do to stop checkmate as the knight takes on h6. Now, this really isn't what Nimzowitsch was talking about when he talked about blockade in his later book about blockade and in My System, but it's kind of a spectacular example of blockade here, as both this rook and this pawn are stuck, surrounded by back pieces, and there's just no way to create luft. You have to allow the checkmate, and the game ends. A fantastic final position. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. And also, if you liked that video, there is a playlist of brilliant moves that you should check out for more examples just like this.